Hey guys, I figured I'd take a little bit of time to go over the Nensous that'll be coming out shortly and a couple of the batches after that, just so you guys have a good idea of what you want to save your gems for and what you're going to chase. So let's get right into it. So the first Nenso is the Sahara Nenso, and basically here's going to be my standard disclaimer with all these. If the main character that you want to raise has a Nenso, you want to get the Nenso for that character if it's a 5-star Nenso, almost all the time. However, you do have to remember that your gems are not unlimited unless you are a whale, so just remember that you need to kind of pick and choose your battles here. You've had a good idea so far of what the banners look like in Global. They might not always stay the same. I highly doubt they'll get better. They almost certainly will get worse eventually in the future, just like regular pools have. But for now, you can probably take that as a good steady, this is what to expect. So let's get into Zahar's Nenso here. So Zahar's Nenso kind of has two parts to it. And one part matters and the other part doesn't. So the part that matters is the Sahara Nenso itself. And that is because it is going to have great stats for Sahar, and it's also going to have good stats for Nigel. You don't have Nigel yet, but you will be getting him with the Wrath Babble, which will be coming out with these groups of Nensos. So the base is physical attack, and the bonus for the Shadow Messiah group is slash attack power. It does actually benefit Silma, but Silma has her own Nenso that she wants to use, and Zen is crap, so he doesn't want to use this Nenso either. So pretty much Zahar and Nigel are the only two who are going to use this Nenso. It does have a really nice HP stat for Zahar and Nigel though, and it does have a vision ability, which is an attack. It is a water attack, but it still does pretty good damage if I remember correctly. I believe I showcased it in the Zahar preview. And here's a nice large picture of the art in case you wanted to see that. How good is this Nenso? It is very good, but it's very limited in scope. It's not going to have like a very wide variety of buffs that it's going to provide to a ton of units. One of the units is a limited thunder unit, and the other unit it worked well on. Now, the VCR. This weapon here. This is going to go to Leticia, and only Leticia is going to be able to use this, and Leticia just is not a very good unit. She's going to be a limited water support unit. She really doesn't mesh well with the Shadow Messiah group in my opinion because she wants to buff magic attack, and they're all physical attackers with the exception of Maya and Ira really. So yeah, this is just not a very good VCR. Even if you do get the Nenso, I highly suggest, like, I mean, you can, if you get a Rathalos farm week in the VCR stage, go ahead and farm it, but I would not go out of your way to get this VCR. Alright, let's take a look at Spica's Nenso Day, because I'm sure this is the one that everybody's going to want the most, and it is good. It's just, once again, it's pretty limited in scope. So the base stats is HP, that's kind of garbage, but the Shadow Messiah group, 96 attack when it's max limit break. That's a lot of attack. It's also going to give Spica when it's max limit break 16 speed, which, let's face it, Spica really does need. That really is going to help her a lot. This basically single-handedly fixes Spica's speed issues and gives her some extra attack to work with. Now, there is a buff vision ability that Rathalos units can use. It is a 70% physical attack and magic attack buff, and it lasts for 3 turns, which is good. That's really good. It does have an attack on it, and it really only is going to be super good in the hands of a Spica, basically. But other units can use it, though. But it's going to do the most damage on Spica. Now, in this case, the VCR is, once again, pretty limited, but it is a little bit better. So this is Spica's Hairpin, and it has 13 evade, 10 initial jewels, 10 agility, and 50 stop resistance. And this is going to let Spica not have to use her, not have to use the Wanderer's Hat anymore to get those initial jewels that she's going to need for her charge up and jump. Now, she is not going to have enough jewels to do her charge up and cross jump, so if you want to do that, you're still going to have to use the Wanderer's Hat. But if you want to use one of the jumps in her sub kit, This is going to let you use that with the charge up. The evade rate is pretty nice because Spica is sort of slow, so the regen armor isn't as effective on her. I'm sure as a lot of you have noticed now, the faster your unit goes, the more effective regen armor is, because obviously you regen more often. It's a really good accessory, and it's actually a really good accessory on Blanchette too. Not really many other units use it though. So let's move on to the Maya Nenso, because this, in my opinion, is the real star of the show. So Maya's Nenso has a really good VCR, and it's a really good Nenso in general. Let me quick pull it up here. I've got the database on in the background because it's easier just to read English than it is to read the Japanese straight up sometimes. So this is going to be your only base magic attack Nenso for a very long time. We really don't have many of these even now in Japan. So I would not fuse your Maya Nensos. I'd collect several copies of them, because the one thing Maya's Nenso is really good for is it has this dark attack on its vision ability, and this is going to give a lot of units just some extra dark coverage. And while it isn't necessarily the strongest attack and it's really dual intensive, it's a really nice thing to have. As for the other stats, it gives the Shadow Messiah group more HP. Now, it doesn't give as much HP as, let's say, the Sahara Nenso did, but that Sahara Nenso's HP is on a smaller group within the Shadow Messiah group. This gives it to the whole Shadow Messiah group. But then again, Maya and Sahara are the only two who would ever really run together to begin with, so it's kind of redundant anyways, and it's not super helpful, but it is helpful for Maya. Now, the group skill here is for Maya and Ira is another unit that will be coming out with the Rathrus Babel. And she is a Magia controller, and she's basically like Rathrus Nina. Now, Nina is a stronger Magia controller than Ira is, but Ira is still a great unit, and she also has an insane leader skill, so she's actually very much worth getting in my opinion. Magic attack and dex on this group skill here, and that's pretty much it for the Nenso. Now for the VCR. The VCR is probably not going to be as important in Global because of the Chipmunk gear piece, but it's going to give Jump +1, 25 max Joules, 15 Magic modifier, and 50 Paralysis resist. And it's going to give a 100% Magic charge up to Rathrus units. So any Rathrus unit should be able to use this piece of gear. And it is still kind of limited on who can use it, but one particular person of note I wanted to point out who can use it is Krima, because she is also a Rathrus mage, and her Wind to Nuke scales off of magic modifier. Now, you could always throw the Chipmunk gear piece on her instead, but honestly, Jump +1 is a much better stat than the Evade on the Chipmunk, so this is going to be better than the Chipmunk in my opinion. And just a real quick up close of the art, just so that way you guys can see. And I think I forgot to do it for the Spica Nenso, so let me go back quick and pull up the Spica Nenso. Just in case any of you wanted to like screenshot it or anything. Because obviously, since I can play in a basically it's like a Steam version of Japanese mobile games, and it lets me put these videos up in high definition like I do. So let's see here. What's the next Nenso that we should be looking at? Let's take a look at the 4 stars. Alright, so first up is the Rosa Nenso for the 4 stars. Now, the Rosa Nenso is good on Rosa and pretty much no one else. But it is really good on Rosa. That 480 HP you see at the bottom, super nice because Rosa is super squishy as a ninja, and this helps counter that squish. The Rathrus bonus is for, looks like magic attack, and the base stat is physical defense. Now the VCR here is actually helpful on 2 units. The first one is obviously Rosa. It's going to give +10 death sentence, +10 jump modifier, 10 evasion rate, and 7 initial joules. Rosa's going to want the Wanderer's Hat in Global, probably, if you want to really be able to use her full kit from turn 1 with a charge up. But at the same time, it's, do you have the space for the Wanderer's Hat? Now, in Japan, this VCR did get buffed eventually, and it now gives an additional 40 attack and 40 dex. Now, the other unit that this VCR is good on is actually going to be Little Ouroboros. And that is because Little Ouroboros is, while she's not a great unit overall, she is the best map clearer in the game. In other words, she has the best map-wide AoE without a charge up in the game. I don't know if Minerva can do more damage or not. She probably can. But it's because of things like getting this 10... She can get a 10 jump modifier along with a plus 15 dark all damage buff from the Rado VCR. And combine that with a map-wide jump, and she can basically one-shot all the material maps relatively easily, just turn one. It's kind of a niche use, and it obviously doesn't have much practical use. Any other jumping Rathalos unit can use this VCR, but none of the other Rathalos units really use jumps. So, on to the Lamia and Nenso. So let me pull out of this and pull up the Lamia and Nenso here. Okay, so the base stat on this is agility, and the Rathalos bonus is to physical defense, but the real bonus here is going to come to Lamia and Theresa with the 65 physical attack. Maybe you guys will get Theresa because you don't have her yet, and she's part of the Nenso, as you can see. It's actually a pretty nice picture. A lot of the 4-star Nensos aren't as high of a quality of a picture as the 5-star Nensos for obvious reasons. But I mean, this one's pretty nice. As far as the VCR goes, the VCR is just kind of worthless. It's going to be 8 agility, 10 evasion rate, 40 poison resist, and 10 magic resist. And it can be used by female Rathalos units. It's just really not that good. So moving on to the next one, and this is going to be the prize of the 4-star Rathalos Nensos that you will be getting. At least in my opinion. And that's because of the VCR. But let's take a look at the Nenso first. So base stat on it is physical defense. Now, the reason this is nice is because the Rathalos bonus is plus 13 dark, which is dark all damage, which there just so happens to be a lot of dark units in Rathalos that can use this in a single team together. So this is one of the very few Rathalos Nensos that you're going to have that can actually benefit your entire Rathalos dark team. So yeah, there's that. Now for Glance and Anastasia, 480 HP, and at max limit break, it's going to give it a 16 magic evasion rate, which is kind of meh because none of them stack evasion really. But it is what it is. This one isn't too bad in the arts department either, I guess. All the 4-stars are just kind of yellowish. Now, the VCR is where this is really going to shine, and that is because this is Gerard's weapon, basically. And I mean this quite literally. This thing was designed for Gerard. It gives 40 attack, 40 physical defense, 10 pierce modifier, and 10 initial jewels. And it's going to have a gear ability, or a weapon ability, which is a 5 range single target thunder attack that is typeless in its damage type. And it actually does pretty good damage, and it has 40 water exploits. So, yeah, it was designed for Gerard, but Ankh can use it too. So you're going to want to grab at least 2 copies of this gun lance here. And that should be it for the 4-stars, I believe, that are coming out. Should I go into desert? Let's go into the desert Nensos, just because the desert Nensos will be coming out after that, and I kind of want to just do this in one video because I have the day off today. So, the Bolt Nenso. Out of all of the Nensos I've shown you so far, Bolt is the only one that's broken. It is so good, it is hard to describe how good this thing is. So, base stat on it is agility. That's already pretty good. Agility base stats, physical attack base stats, and magic attack base stats are obviously the best stats you can have. And for some characters, agility is just straight up the best base stat. Because don't forget that that will scale. That 5 agility there is going to scale if you have any like plus agility skills or passives. They can scale with that stat. Now, it's also going to give additional bonus agility to the desert group. So, desert runs really well together because it's got a lot of wind units, so it can abuse leader skill and Nensos. I went over this in my Desert Wind video, but it gives a lot of agility. At max limit break in Japan, this is going to give 16 agility with the Desert Group bonus, and then 7 agility with the base bonus, which is going to total an additional 23 agility on whatever unit is using this from the Desert Group, which is insane. It's just absolutely insane. That's like literally 10% of the highest agility in the game on a unit. It's insane. It isn't going to really provide much damage per se, but it does have a bunch of other stuff that it gives. So let's go in a bit further here. So the group down here, it is the one that says 67 physical attack and 101 dex. That is for Bolt and Carla, and you can see Carla in the picture here if you didn't know who that is. And if you're worried about spoilers, what are you doing in a Japan content YouTube video channel? So yeah, this is a lot of damage, and Bolt only scales off a physical attack. I believe Twin Blade is physical attack only, but Carla will be using that dex in her damage calculation, although she's kind of limited because she uses the dex damage calculation, but whatever. But it's going to really help out Bolt start hitting the numbers that he wants to hit. Now, the real reason that this Nenso is broken is because of the vision ability. And it is a self-centered 5 diamond AoE that gives 3 turns of plus 50 slash, pierce, strike, and missile modifier with plus 40% HP. Any person in the desert can use this. Hisham, Rahu, Bolt, Carla, whoever you want to put this on can use this buff. And that's why it's so powerful. It does a lot, gives you a lot of extra damage. We're talking a couple extra 1,000 damage per unit, and you can buff up your entire unit team like this. I like to use Neferti, and at the same time, I'll also buff up my unit's HP permanently with the Forecaster HP buff, and it really helps the desert stand apart. There's also another AoE attack here that you get from the vision abilities. I'm not going to really go over this because I've been over this in several videos before. Now, as for the VCR, the VCR is actually kind of worthless. So this is going to be good on Carla at first, but eventually Carla just isn't going to really run her Berserker anymore, and just because Berserker is just a bad class in Japan right now, and she's likely going to favor her Valkyrie with the Ramsey's VCR instead for extra damage. Carla is still a good unit though because she has an absolutely crazy leader skill. So if you want to chase Carla, she's not a bad unit to have if not for just her leader skill. And she's just, she is a good unit. Berserkers aren't bad units, they just really don't perform at the level we need them to in Japan right now for the kind of content they give us. So the only other desert Nenso that you are going to be getting, because the other desert Nensos will not be coming anytime soon for you guys, is the Lyle Nenso. And the Lyle Nenso itself is good, it's just on a really bad unit. So if you like Lyle, well, congratulations, he's kind of viable, but he's never going to be one of the greats. Now the Nenso itself gives a base of Dex, which is why I have it on Tina right now. Any kind of archer is going to want to use this. The desert group, its bonus is going to be missile modifier, but unfortunately there just aren't too many units who use missile damage in the desert group. We have Lyle. I guess Uzuma technically has a missile attack on her sub. Who else do we even have? I mean, Aswad has Gunner, if you want to include that, and so does Stree. But I mean, there just really aren't many good options for missile damage in the desert group. So there is an Ankh and a Lyle group that gives area attack res, and that's just a bad stat. It's basically the reason that no one likes Arc as a upgrade, as a job enchantment to the Holy Cavalier, is because area attack resistance just isn't super helpful, and it's not worth what you give up to get it. And in this particular instance, it's just not a great stat. It does come with a vision ability attack that I showcased in my Tina video. Now, the reason that the Lyle Nenso is actually good is because of this VCR. And this VCR is hands down the best bow in the game. it is so good that most collab units that have special bows designed specifically for them would rather use this bow instead, because it gives 50 attack, 50 dex, 15 joules obtained, and 10 missile modifier. It's nuts. I have like 5 of them, and I want more. So, yeah, that's it for the 5-star Desert Nensous that'll be coming out. Let's move on to the 4 stars, because the 4 stars are part of the reason why Desert's so strong. So let's go over the Ramsey first, because this is a crazy Nenso. For a 4-star, this Nenso is nuts. So, magic defense is its base stat, kinda meh. But, for the Desert group, 480 HP. That's a great number for the Desert group. Take a nice look at that Nenso there. Ramsey's, he's glorious. He's absolutely glorious. So, aside from giving the useful stat of HP to the entirety of the Desert group, what's the group down here? So, 13 speed, as well as at max limit break, it'll give you 6 thunder resistance for Ramsey's and Neferti. And you can see Neferti there in the back and the bottom right. I don't think they ever go over who this young girl is in the front left, but in the back right there is Neferti. I believe it is Ramsey's sister, and she is a rather powerful limited unit. And when she comes out, I think that she's a better investment than Carla is personally. But she does taper off a little bit, like in the current meta, but she is still extremely strong, and she has a crazy good leader skill. So she is really worth getting, in my opinion. Oh, right, VCR. So the VCR, this thing is pretty freaking crazy, and this is one of the reasons why this Nenso is so great. It's because what? Oh shoot, my internet might crash here. Oh, never mind. Okay, so what this does is every time that I believe every time that Ramses gets a kill, he gets a stack on his snowball gear here. The base stats are 15 max joules, 6 agility, 50 paralysis resistance, and 8 pierce attack power or modifier, whatever you'd like to call it. Each stack of that snowball is 10 pierce attack power and 10 jump attack power or modifier. So at max, after 10 kills, Ramsey's walking around with 100 pierce modifier. That's scary. That's really scary. And that's the reason why Carla wants to run Valkyrie with this particular VCR. It's because despite Valkyrie having relatively low numbers in general, because you can get up to like 100 pierce modifier on it, if you feed her some kills early, she can actually do some pretty respectable damage and be really freaking tanky. So that's the best of the 4 stars, but we still got a couple more that are pretty good. Let's take a look here at the Aswad Nenso. So the Aswad Nenso was in the second batch of Desert. I didn't mention, but the Lyle and Aswad Nenso came in the second batch. The base stat on this is actually critical rate, so +5 critical rate, which is kind of a weird stat to have. I think it's the only Nenso that has that stat as a base stat, and it might be the only Nenso that has that stat in general. It's not like it's super helpful or anything, but it's not a bad stat. It's much better than something like defense. My internet's being slow, so it's not loading. I think this is... I want to say it's light resistance to Desert Group. And down below, this looks like slash modifier +10, and the one below that I'm almost positive is magic evade. And why is magic evade a big deal? So, in case you didn't know, Aswad is a magic evasion meme. She can get like 97% magic evade or something stupid, and like you just can't hit her with magic attacks. So in a map where you had to take some serious damage from magic attacks, this is a great unit to have, and the Nenso helps her get there. So the VCR is just a little bit more of that. It's going to give HP, and I can't get the exact numbers right now because it won't pull up for some reason. I don't know if it's my internet or the database. But anyways, it's going to give you quite a bit of HP. It's going to give you some evade. And believe it or not, you can use this on any twin blade character that isn't the Bashini unique. Because let's just face it, that would have been kind of crazy. Anyways, it actually has its own mini charge up. It's like, I think 70% attack or something. Or maybe it's a little less. I can't remember the exact numbers. You can look them up yourself in the database. But it's a great piece of gear to have. I actually run this on my Bolt and Aswad too, if I've raised her, which I haven't. Okay, so next up is the Ankh Nenso. Its going to base rate is 60 HP. It's going to give 64 attack power to the desert units, which makes it a good Nenso to run in your group, even if you don't have Ankh in with your wind group. What I normally do is I run the Ramsey's Nenso on Nefertiti, and then I run the Ankh Nenso on Ramsey so he can get even more attack power. The group skill at the bottom is physical defense, magical defense, and hit rate, and it's to Ankh and Lyle. I'm not too fond of the artwork on this one. But the VCR on it is good for Ankh, and it's basically going to give him water all damage, some speed, and it's going to give him a weapon ability that's going to give him a ranged typeless water attack, which is nice to have. It's a good skill to have, and it's the reason I run it on Ankh instead of the Ramsey's VCR. It's because of that extra water damage there. So moving on, this one's a bit of a dud, and this is the Lucien and Retzius Nenso. And, okay, my internet seems to be working again. So, the base stat on it is physical attack. So, it's actually not a bad one to just throw onto a random unit who can't use the group skills. But the desert bonus is physical defense, and the bonus to Lucien and Retzius is initial jewels. So, this is going to get Lucien across the finish line for the turn 1 charge up Sand Dragon, probably, in Global with the Wanderer's Hat. Take that with a grain of salt, because that's pretty much all Lucien is good for anymore. So, yeah, this will let you use your Lucien a little bit more in Global. But the nice part of it is actually the VCR, which is, well, it's not great, it's not bad either. So it gives plus 5 guts, 500 HP, 10 wind resistance, and 10 water resistance. And if you have it on Retzius, it's actually going to give him auto regen. But the problem with that is then you'd have to use Retzius. So what I actually do is I put this on my Nefertiti because it's got a really high HP value, which makes it ideal for a forecaster that Nefertiti just so happens to be. It can only be used by desert units, so there is that. And that is it for the 5 stars. So there is one more Nenso you need to know about. And that is the Stree Nenso. So the Stree Nenso is a 3-star Nenso. And the base stat on it is physical attack. And the group bonus down here is for the... basically they're like the gambling units. So Aisha, Stree, Arkil, like all of the people who are kind of associated with like the sketchy like gambling scene in the game are kind of included in this group. The Nenso itself just isn't that good. Stree is just not that great of a unit. But the VCR on it isn't half bad. So I actually use this VCR quite often. It is it gives plus 1 jump, plus 7 agility, and plus 30 max jewels, and I use it because plus 1 jump is actually a good, nice thing to have. And I like to put it on desert supports because, generally speaking, their jump is kind of low, and that lets them traverse maps a bit easier while also having more jewels to start with. It's not a great VCR, but it does have its uses. So that should basically cover all of the Rathalos and Desert Babel Nensos that you need to know about. If there's any kind of collabs that are coming that have Nensos in it, I don't know anything about it, so unfortunately I can't go over it right now. Sorry it's been kind of long and rambly. It's just I figured I'd just kind of go over them one by one and their uses in Japan right now, just so you don't have to do the research yourself. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.